Hello, Five Psych lovers. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to take a deep dive into something that affects all of us, even though we may not realize it. The belief that we're making rational decisions all the time when, in fact, we're often falling into mental traps and shortcuts that lead us to less desirable outcomes. I'm talking about the fallacy of default rationality. The idea that we as humans automatically think things through logically. Spoiler alert, unfortunately we don't. And today we're going to explore why that happens, how these mental shortcuts mess with our judgment, and how we can do better to avoid poor decisions and regret. So let's start by clearing the air. Most of us like to think we're logical creatures. We tickle ourselves with the idea that we are rational, that we always weigh the pros and cons and make decisions based on the facts. Well, not so fast. The reality of the matter isn't as exciting. The truth is, the human brain is wired to take shortcuts, known as heuristics, when making decisions. It's efficient in making small decisions like what to eat or where, but it's also risky because these shortcuts often bypass the deeper analysis needed for sound judgment. Think about it like this. You're in a supermarket and you see a box of cereal with a label that says 100% natural. Immediately, your brain assumes the cereal is healthier than other brands, without looking at the nutrition labels of each and comparing them. That right there is a mental trap that many marketing brands capitalize on. This is just one small example of how we think we're being rational when we're really letting our brains take the easy way out. Let's break down some of the most common mental shortcuts that we fall for, ones that more often than not lead to painfully poor decisions. First up is the availability heuristic. This happens when we make decisions based on the information that's most readily available in our minds, rather than seeking out all the facts. A classic example: let's say you're thinking about taking a flight, but you recently saw a news story about a plane crash. Even though flying is statistically one of the safest modes of travel, your brain latches onto that recent, vivid memory of the crash, and suddenly, you're terrified and decide to travel by train. That's not rational thinking, that's a mental pitfall in action. Another common trap is confirmation bias, where we actively seek out information that supports what we already believe, ignoring facts or evidence that contradict it. For example, if you think a certain diet is the best way to lose weight, you'll probably look for stories of people who've had success with it, and conveniently ignore the research that says otherwise. We do this all the time, whether it's about health, politics, or personal relationships, and it keeps us locked into poor decisions. So why do we fall into these traps so easily? A lot of it comes down to mental laziness. Our brains are designed to save energy by sticking to patterns and defaults, which works fine for simple things. But when it comes to more complex decisions, like financial investments, relationships, or career moves, those shortcuts can backfire in a big way. Imagine you hear that a particular stock is hot, and everyone is buying it. So without doing any real research, you invest a large chunk of your money into it, assuming the hype means it'll be a good choice. It may feel good in that instance knowing you are jumping in with many others. But what happens if the stock crashes? Suddenly, you're left with regret, slapping yourself for not taking the time to evaluate it properly. And yet sooner or later we find ourselves repeating the same mistake again. So how do we stop falling for these mental pitfalls and start making decisions that won't leave us full of regret? It comes down to two key things: awareness and intention. First, we need to be aware that these shortcuts exist and recognize when we're using them. For example, next time you're making a decision, whether it's about what car to buy, what job to take, or even who to date, take a moment to ask yourself, am I basing this decision on facts, or am I letting my brain take a shortcut? Awareness is half the battle. Second, we need to be intentional about slowing down the decision-making process. Instead of just going with the first option that feels right, dig deeper. Look at the data, consider alternatives, and most importantly, be willing to question your initial assumptions. For instance, when someone gives you advice, especially if it feels like it's confirming what you already believe, pause and ask, is this true, or is it just what I want to hear? That little moment of self-check often is all you need to save yourself from a whole lot of heartache. Was this helpful? Catch you on the next episode. Sage Sir Bruce signing out.